Hi again, it's Nikolai Warren here with the third video in the series of 5 videos about important organization design ideas. We have all observed that the formal structure that is shown on the organization chart does not necessarily represent how people actually work inside an organization. In some cases, a lack of alignment between process and structure creates a real impediment to achieving efficiency and productivity. So in this video, I'll discuss how we can align the formal structure with the work processes. I'll also show you a simple tool that you can use for this purpose. Both practical experience and academic research confirm that to achieve high performance, you need to design an organization where there's alignment between the formal structure, the units, roles, and reporting relationships, and the work processes. But at times, the two may be in misalignment. It has been shown that this can be an issue at any level. The way we define an individual role can be out of sync with how work is performed, and so can the structure of a business unit or the entire corporation. Why does this happen? There are probably several different reasons. Work processes change over time, so that even if the structure was aligned with the processes at some point in time, they may gradually have moved out of alignment. For example, this can happen when we standardize work processes or introduce new IT systems to support the processes. In some cases, we deal with these issues at different points in time. So we think about the formal structure when we reshuffle the roles of key managers, and we mainly think about business processes when we have a specific improvement initiative related to quality or cost or speed. We consider how much money we can save by outsourcing certain activities at one point in time, and only later think about the effects that this decision has on the work processes. I have worked with companies that have outsourced some activities and that had to reverse the decision soon afterwards because they discovered that the activities were difficult to separate from other activities performed internally. We need to connect the two dimensions. You should never implement a new organizational model or indeed make changes to the formal structure without considering how this will affect the work processes. Now, we don't need a detailed process analysis or binders full of flowcharts to do this. In fact, the process documentation that exists in many companies is often far too detailed and not that helpful for this purpose. What we need to do is to consider the interdependencies between the different roles or units that perform a given work process. So if you look at the organization chart, you basically ask yourself what is going on in the white spaces between the boxes on the chart. The question we should ask is, when considering a particular role or unit, is which other roles or units it depends on for information or resources, and which other units or roles it delivers to. So we're basically mapping the inputs and the outputs. We may be able to guess the main relationships, but I would recommend that we interview people in the organization about how they work and draw some simple interface diagrams for each major unit in the current organization to summarize the results of the interviews. On this diagram, you can indicate the interdependencies by using arrows between the boxes. In the book I have written, I show several examples of such diagrams and also discuss some more sophisticated approaches where you also take into consideration the importance and uncertainty of the different interdependencies that you identify between roles or units. Note that we're not talking about social networks here. We are not asking people who they like to socialize with, but about who they depend on to perform their core tasks. So the units and roles that are interdependent are the ones that rely on each other for information or resources, which means that they need to communicate and interact on a frequent basis to solve issues that come up. The level of interdependency is really a continuum from low to high, but for simplicity, I will here simply divide it into low and high. If there is low interdependency or a low degree of interdependency, there's no need for frequent interaction, and you can coordinate by using plans or procedures, which is generally less costly and time-consuming. Then when it comes to the formal structure, there's also a range of options. But again, I will simplify this and assume that you basically have two choices. You can either separate or integrate. If you have a department or a business unit, you can split it in two. If you have two teams or two units, you can integrate them into one. This gives way to a simple diagram that I created and which I describe in more detail in my book. I now refer to it as Fraps Framework for Aligning Process and Structure. Fraps is an acronym, obviously, but also has a meaning. For those of us who are not native English speakers, it means to tighten or remove slack, for example, in a sail. So we can think about it as tightening the relationship between processes and structure. Now, it's not the diagram per se which is important, but the principle behind it. What I tried to do was to find a simple way of expressing a key guiding principle that is supported by a lot of academic research on organizations. The basic idea is that if you separate roles or units that are highly interdependent, you fragment the organization and get the famous silos that many large organizations are suffering from. On the other hand, going too far in the other direction is actually equally bad. When you integrate roles or units that are not interdependent, you just increase coordination cost and force people to collaborate and communicate with each other, people who would actually benefit from working separately. An effective organization is one where there is alignment between the two dimensions. That is, one that is designed so that it integrates the interdependent parts and separates the independent parts. One implication of this framework is that it can be done in two different ways. You can get alignment either by changing the work processes, for example by standardizing them so that you reduce the level of interdependency, or by changing the formal structure of the organization. Finally, you may ask, how can this idea possibly change the world? Well, there is a lot of research that confirms that a low degree of alignment between process and structure can be a cause of poor performance. And at the same time, a number of studies suggest that we easily misperceive interdependencies if we just rely on our intuition when we make structural choices. So hopefully the Fraps tool that I have described can be a reminder that we need to bring up the issue explicitly in the decision process, that we need to collect data about how people work together and consider these data before we decide on a new organizational model. I hope you found this useful. As always, let me know whether you have any questions or comments.